Okay, in this video I'm going to walk you through the steps to install Open Education Analytics in your own Azure subscription. So you start here at the OpenEDU Analytics GitHub repository, and if you scroll down, first it'll tell you what you need, which is an Azure subscription, and you need to have the role assignment of owner. And it's a three-step process to install Open Education Analytics. It's launching the Cloud Shell, it's cloning this repository, and then it's running the setup script. And so what this will accomplish is setting up the reference architecture, setting up all the Azure resources you need, and also bringing in some test data sets so that you can walk through an example. Okay, so if you control-click on this Launch Cloud Shell, it'll open up Cloud Shell in another tab for you. And Cloud Shell provides a command line interface, either in Bash or in PowerShell. And the command line interface then allows you to provision Azure resources to your subscription. So we'll use this command line to clone the repository and then to kick off the setup script. So first we clone the repository. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to change directory into Cloud Drive. Paste this command, and we'll kick off the cloning of the repository. Okay, so it's pulling down this GitHub repository into the Cloud Drive. And as soon as that's completed, we can run the setup script. All right, great. So now that it's completed, we can kick off the setup. So I'm going to copy and paste this setup command. And there are a couple options for the setup command. The simplest one is to just give it your own suffix. I'm going to call this demo x, let's see, 1123. And you know, the suffix just allows for the naming of the resources that will be provisioned. You need to have a globally unique name for some of the resources. So this is the simplest way to invoke the setup script. You could also specify what location you wanted the resources to be created in, and you can also specify whether or not to create security groups. And so there's more of that information here. They have additional setup options listed here, and you could also open up this EDU Analytics Solution Guide, and that gives you more details of with screenshots and everything of how you do this setup. All right, so I'm going to kick this off, and we'll see that it begins to provision these Azure resources in my Azure subscription, starting with the resource group, and then moving on to the storage account. All right, so this will take a couple of minutes to finish. The step that's going to take the longest is this creating Synapse workspace. Okay, so once the setup script has completed provisioning all the resources, you'll notice at the end that you have a link to go directly to your Synapse workspace. You can also get there by going in through Azure Portal, and one way to do that is to click on this icon here, and you know, this is showing you your Azure Portal. You can jump back and forth, right? You can also just minimize this area. So if I go into resource groups now, what I'll see is that the resource group I just created is here. And so within that resource group, it created this storage account, it created the Spark cluster, and the Synapse workspace. If you look at the storage account, you'll see that it has multiple containers. So stage 1 of the data lake, stage 2, stage 3. It also has a test environment, which has stage 1 with test data for the walkthrough. All right, so let's go into our Synapse workspace. So you can click open here. So launching that opens the separate Synapse workspace. It does the same as if I had clicked here. All right, so as the Synapse workspace comes up, I won't go into a full tutorial here, but the next step is going to be to bring in a notebook that we can process some of the demo data with. If you go to data and you go to linked, you can see where that demo data is. So this is the data lake that was created. If I click on test env, then I can see here's the demo data. And in fact, I can go in, let's go all the way down to roster. We'll right click here and select top 100 rows. I can query this data. All right, so this is the test data. Okay, so now we want to bring in a notebook from the repository, and the best way to do that is to download it from our cloud drive. So if you come here and click on the upload download files, manage file share, and then navigate to OpenEDU Analytics. When we ran the setup script, it created this temp directory and it copied these files in, and it replaced the name of the data lake so that you can run the example. So let's right click on this Contoso ISD all-in-one and download that, and then we'll upload it. All right, so now we come over to Synapse. Let's go over into develop, and then let's do an import. Okay, so now I have this notebook that's ready to go. It is correctly referring to the name of the storage account that I provisioned, and I can click Run All. You'll also notice that it's attaching to this Spark 1 cluster. This is a cluster that was provisioned also as part of the initial setup. The cluster shuts down when it's not in use. So it doesn't incur cost unless you're actually running a process. So this takes a few minutes to start up. Once it starts up, the execution will go through one cell at a time, executing these PySpark commands and processing data from the test data sets. So you'll notice that in the test environment, there is no stage 2, stage 3 yet for the data lake. But what's happening now is when that script completes, it will have processed data from stage 1 and have written it to a stage 2 and stage 3. Okay, so once the Spark cluster has started, you'll see that this switches the status to running, and right now it's this cell that's in the process of running. If you come and look at view and monitoring, it jumps you to within Synapse, the monitoring section within Synapse, and you can get more details of that process. You can also, if we go back here, you can also look at the progress in the Spark UI itself. So if you're familiar with working with Spark clusters, this gives you that detailed view of being able to really drill into the execution. Okay, so it has finished a few of these cells. So if we come back now over to data, we can look at the test environment again, and now we've got stage 2 and stage 3. If we go into stage 2, we'll see some of the data has been processed now, right? And if we go to stage 3, we'll see too that, let's go into roster and we'll query on person here. Drill into person. First of all, you'll see that it's a Parquet file in stage 2. And if you do a query here, you'll see too that in stage 3. So you'll see that in stage 3, there's been this anonymization that's been performed. All right, so we have the data lake up and running. in fact, if you go to workspace here, not only do we have the data lake set up, but Spark databases have also been created. So let's see. And what's good about this is it allows you to connect through Power BI to these data sources. So if you go back to your Azure portal, let's go to the resource group that we created. And if you go into Synapse, on the far right here, you see this serverless SQL endpoint. You can use this as a way of connecting to your data lake, basically to query any of these Spark databases. And these Spark databases are essentially just metadata that points to the data that's in the data lake. All right, so let me show you now within Power BI how you can view an example dashboard against this data lake. So within, one of the assets that comes with this OpenEDU Analytics is this Contoso ISD demo package, which contains a Power BI, this tech inequity dashboard. So when you did the cloning at the beginning, it's in your cloud drive. So you can come here and go to Manage File Share. You can go to OpenEDU Analytics, go to Packages, go to Contoso ISD, go to Power BI, and then let's download this PBIX. All right, so once it's downloaded, you can open that. Okay, so you click on this icon here in order to modify the data source. So data source settings is where you want to go. And then you'll click change source. And what you want to put here is that SQL serverless endpoint. So I'm going to click over back to our Synapse. Sorry about that. Let's click back over to Synapse. We'll get the serverless SQL endpoint, and we'll copy that in. I'm going to point to my test S2 Contoso ISD. So I'm giving it the name of this database here, this test S2 Contoso ISD. And I'll click OK, and then I'll click Edit Permissions. And here you need to give it your credentials. So edit credentials, go to Microsoft account and sign in. Hit save, click OK, and close, and then apply changes. Okay, and that's it. From here you can navigate through the dashboard and get a feel for the data sets that you have in your data lake. And if you want additional information, you can refer back to the GitHub repository under the additional info in the OpenEDU Analytics Solution Guide. And we'll continue to post additional videos. And I hope this was helpful. Thanks.